Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of 76 Capital Sports Advisory show. Here, we're working on a title. We're trying to come up with something creative. So if you have ideas, please send them our way.
Please
stop with the generic 76 Capital Sports Advisory show. But you have Dan Bravato here, president of 76 Capital Sports Advisory, and our wonderful friend James Santore, our manager for 76 Capital Sports Advisory.
Everybody.
And we got some great topics today, and also some a great interview on the sports gambling landscape, specifically what's going on with the Chicago Cubs and Michael Jordan and Barstool and FanDuel. So with Pat McAfee, so much to talk about, and I'll let James kick it off.
Yeah, well, big news for Nerd Street Gamers, which is the 76 Capital portfolio company. But they are going to be hosting an all-female Valorant tournament for $10,000. So this is a pretty big deal. Obviously, there's a huge segment of gamers that are female, and I think this is a great opportunity for them to showcase their talents, especially on a game that's becoming one of the most popular games out there right now. So this is really exciting for us to be a part of it from Nerd Street perspective, but also just a great cause. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, the beauty of gaming in general is the sense of community. That's what gaming is all about. It's having a community, and that community is all about inclusivity. Whether that be women, people of color, minorities, so forth and so on. It's really amazing how diverse gaming really is, and we love seeing this kind of stuff. It's funny, actually, 46%, according to Newzoo, of gamers are female. And so that stat surprises a lot of people, but it's I see it all the time in running everything from Overwatch to Call of Duty League. Is you have a ton of women involved in these events, and it's great to see that we're getting these dedicated things. I mean, we've seen dedicated teams with organizations like Gen G having female teams. I believe Dignitas announced a female team as well. So really amazing to see this kind of stuff, and we're super pumped about it. And I think it leads really nicely into our next topic here, which is about gaming in general. And so I think something that people talk about a lot is esports. And esports kind of has this overarching theme of esports is everything. And we actually like to point out that esports is the competitive side of gaming. Gaming is everything from your mom playing Candy Crush on the way to work, all the way to me sitting in front of a computer and playing 5 hours of Warzone on the weekend straight, which I may or may not have done and will continue to do. But what's so crazy about the gaming space? We get asked all the time is, why are you so excited about gaming? Why are you so excited about esports and the rise of it? And to me, the easiest indicator right now that I'm telling people is look what's been going on in the stock market. And that kind of seems like a crazy correlation. But if you pay close attention to Activision Blizzard, 2K, Best Buy, and some of these other organizations that are heavily invested in the gaming space, you'll see incredible numbers. I mean, Nintendo's last quarter was up 400% in profit over the previous quarter. And I think a lot of that has to do with, I know for a fact a lot of that has to do with Animal Crossing, which has been their huge hit recently. And they just announced today a Battle Royale with Super Mario. So I think it's just incredible to think that this pandemic, as terrible as it's been, has shed some light on the gaming world and has increased the popularity of gaming across the board, whether that's a casual gamer to a professional gamer. You're just seeing tons of more hours being consumed on Twitch on the more pro and streamer side, all the way to Nintendo selling out of Switches because every 10-year-old, every 20, 30, 40-year-old wants to play Animal Crossing. It's really been amazing. So I'll let James throw in his thoughts there because I think it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see this, and as somebody that kind of grew up in the online gaming boom in the mid-late 2010s, it's pretty awesome to see that the growth of this industry. I think, like you said, Dan, like COVID has really been a Kickstarter for all this. I mean, I think people that have always wanted to get back into gaming or get into gaming in the first place have used this time as an opportunity to do so. And I think that they see what gaming provides. And I think that is a release from the real world to a degree. I think it's a way to be creative. I think it's a way to bring people together. I think you have families playing together. You have dads, kids, anybody that you want to play together with, you can. And that's even with professional athletes, which is a whole nother topic we'll discuss more another time. But the way that gaming has really transcended just being kind of that hobby, especially in these past few months, has been really fun to watch. And I know that I'm excited to be involved in this industry and really kind of, being a fan of it as well. It's been a lot of fun to see how this has all progressed. I think it's really only the beginning.
Absolutely. I completely agree there. And I continue to watch it grow. For me, you would make it akin to a garden, right? We've planted seeds during this pandemic with this massive increase in sales of consoles and PCs and gaming titles. And that is only going to create more gaming fans moving forward. So as we look into the competitive side of gaming, which is esports, we just hope to see more and more growth now that we have more players on the grassroots level. So I just think this is such an amazing thing that has truly expedited the growth of gaming and esports in the world, just because everyone was home and they had nothing better to do. So why not throw on your PlayStation or Xbox or PC and get some Fall Guys in, or get some Warzone in, whatever it may be.
Exactly. And the game like Fall Guys, I mean, for those of you who don't know, Fall Guys is literally, I think they call them, like they're literally, I don't even know what they're called. Like they're just little blobs of cartoon, but it's a bunch of mini games. It's like Mario Party on steroids to a degree, and it's the most popular game in the world right now. And I'm literally watching Fall Guys on Twitch sometimes because it's fun to watch. And now I've started associating that game with these streamers, and now I'm like, oh, I gotta watch so and so stream today. So it's been pretty crazy to think that a game where it's a bunch of little blobs running around is now the most popular game in the world and the most talked about game in the world right now. And I think that type of trend, where you saw it with Fortnite, where it's a game that comes out, what's the longevity going to be like? How are they going to continue to change the way the game is played? And I think they do that through skins. They do it through partnerships, and they always keep it new. And I think a game like Fall Guys is another example of that. And I think that's a trend we'll continue to see as gaming continues to grow.
100% agree.
Yeah, and for our next topic, DraftKings has had a big week, to say the least. So they announced that they're having Michael Jordan come on as a special advisor and an equity investor. They also created a deal with the Cubs for putting a sports book and sports betting things around Wrigley Field. So, Dan, I'd love to kind of get your input on that. It's a huge deal, and it's really just shows the trend of betting becoming more and more involved in professional leagues.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. And the Cubs deal is rumored to be around $10 million a year, which, when coming from the sports sponsorship world, $10 million a year can get you a naming rights deal at a stadium in some cities, in some markets, in some sports. So it's a really, really big deal from the sports business side. And also looking at it, we saw this down in DC at Capital One, but putting the book in the stadium, what does that mean? Like, where are people going to go with that? We have a guest coming up here, Evan Davis, who's going to talk a lot about it. So I don't want to spoil any of his really interesting insights, but I just think it's so fascinating to see this arms race for market share, and you're seeing the benefactors being the teams and leagues who are making all the money on these deals for the land grabs in the respective markets. And I think one of the biggest things to watch right now is, what are the other markets thinking? What are the markets that don't have betting? And something that's really interesting is, what are the surrounding markets saying? You look at Ohio, who's coming up very shortly here, hopefully, having Pennsylvania next door and Michigan right above, where you can go and you can place bets. So if I'm an Ohio resident on the border or close to the border, I'm going to probably cross and make some bets on NFL Sunday or for the NBA Finals. And that's revenue that these states are losing. And then on the team side, the teams are saying, well, where's my sponsorship dollars? Why are the Philadelphia teams getting all the money and I'm getting nothing? When you talk about a team adding $10 million on their sponsorship P&L, that's a beautiful thing that a lot of teams aren't going to sit back and just accept.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important for the growth of this industry to continue making these different partnerships. And I think from a consumer perspective, I think it's a great thing for consumers. I think that having these different partnerships, these different teams, all these teams and leagues getting closer and closer working with these organizations is going to create a better user experience and create really cool opportunities to work and get closer to these teams. I think right now, fan engagement's everything. We can't go to games. We can't take in games like we normally do. So what's the best way to kind of feel like you're a part of that game you're watching? And it's betting. So I think that these teams are starting to see that right now, that people are using betting as that tool to kind of feel like they're still involved like they normally would be. So when things get back to normal and they're able to take what they've learned from kind of this experiment of offering these types of betting opportunities, that the in-person experience and the game experience will be so much better. So I expect a lot more of these types of announcements to come out in the next few weeks and months. But this is really an exciting one, especially in a state like Illinois that has a huge opportunity to take advantage of having betting, and a team like the Cubs and Wrigley, that's a historic stadium that, I think it's pretty damn cool to be able to bet at Wrigley Field. I mean, I've been there a few times, and it is a hell of a place to watch a baseball game. And now if I can go throw a bet down there too, that's a pretty cool experience. So it's really exciting.
Completely agree. And I think now's the perfect time to transition to our interview with Evan Davis. Evan has some amazing takes on what's going on in this space, why this is happening, and what you're going to be seeing moving forward. So excited to bring Evan on. And without much further ado, we're excited to bring on Evan Davis, who's the Managing Director of Sports Betting and Gaming for 76 Capital Sports Advisory. Evan, excited to be on. Evan's background is from the legal side. He's an attorney, but also worked for Bet Rivers here in Philadelphia, formerly Sugar House, where I've lost some money and spent some time over the years. Evan was the general counsel there. So, Evan, excited to have you on.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining the Seven.
Awesome. Well, Evan, I think the first question that the audience would be curious to hear is what's going on in the sports betting world from this, we'll call it a land grab standpoint, where we're seeing PointsBet doing deals in Detroit and Colorado, and DraftKings doing Cubs deals and so forth and so on. What's overall going on in this space, and why is it happening?
Yeah, it's an interesting space because of the way that it's rolled out. So over the last 2.5 years or so now, states have rolled this out really sequentially. And so what you see is one state after another coming online with sports betting. And what that means is that it takes time, right? Deals are getting done in states now like Illinois and Colorado, whereas a year ago, right, those were other states. That was Michigan or Pennsylvania. So it's so the sequence of it matters, and it's a function of the legislation that's coming out. But then aside from that, this has just become some have described it as something of an arms race, where there is a pool of folks out there who are eager to bet on sports, and when sports betting rolls into their state, they are just chomping at the bit and ready to sign up. And so what you see is operators that are coming into these states, and they're all fighting for a customer base, and they're doing what they can to either incentivize these customers or market to these customers, and they're spending a lot of money in the process doing so.
Very cool. So on the lowest level, the federal government obviously has some say in this, and how come it's at the state level now in terms of each state? Why is every state different? Why is every state doing mobile versus tethered versus why is that all happening?
Yeah, so gaming has historically in this country been a state-regulated business, right? Where Nevada had casinos, New Jersey had them in Atlantic City, and most other states did not. And then over the last decade or so, you saw more and more states rolling out commercial gaming, to the point that Pennsylvania became really the second biggest casino market in the country, behind Nevada. So it was it was a very it's always been a state issue and state-regulated industry. But what happened is the federal government for years had passed a law called PASPA, Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, which forbade states from regulating sports betting if they hadn't already done so. And so Nevada was, for all intents and purposes, the only one that had it. So back now, almost 2.5 years ago, the United States Supreme Court invalidated PASPA. What that meant is that states were free to legalize sports betting within their borders. And so the way that states have gone about doing this has been in some ways consistent, and in other ways there are unique differences between states, because the interests are different in states. Some have commercial gaming, some have tribal gaming, some want to are being lobbied by different interests in how that legislation looks. And so while there are some similarities across states, you're seeing some differences as well. Perhaps the most notable of which is the availability of mobile betting. So in some states, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, you can sit in your living room and place a bet on your phone. In other states, New York is probably the most notable. You can't. You have to actually travel to one of the upstate casinos, which aren't even open right now. But when they're open, you need to be able to travel there to bet on sports. So there are differences from state to state, and I think you're going to continue to see those as more and more states roll this out.
So kind of with something you just said there about the mobile betting aspect, and I know living in Pennsylvania and also part-time in New Jersey, it's great to be able to bet from a mobile perspective. So what happens when these types of deals happen with DraftKings, like with the Cubs right now, where they can build a sports book at Wrigley, where they can build different things around Wrigley that you can take bets on? So how would the mobile betting aspect play into that? And would they prefer everything to be land-based in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So first of all, in states where there's a mature mobile market, like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, before COVID, what you saw is over 80% of the handle was wagered through mobile channels. So that's clearly where people's preferences are in terms of making these bets. Now, with that having been said, the brick and mortar sports books play a significant role. So the ones that exist in casinos are really important because they really add to the experience that casinos are providing to people. Folks don't necessarily go to casinos just to play slots or tables. They're going for the ambiance, they're going for the food, they're going for potential other shows or entertainment. And so the sports books are really a crucial component of that. And what I've been saying for years is that if you think of sports books as really just some of the coolest sports bars in America right now, I think that's a really apt description of them. And so when you look at it that way, putting a sports book in Wrigley Field like DraftKings is really something that adds to the whole baseball environment. Right? People go to baseball games, but they might go early and get a beer somewhere nearby. They might stick around late and hang out afterwards somewhere nearby. But people generally aren't going inside and hanging out in the stadiums before and after the games. And so what I think these sports books in stadiums do is give people an excuse to do that. They also really make it easy for somebody that wants to just casually bet on sports to do it. And so you don't have to be an avid sports bettor. You don't have to sign up for an account. You don't have to fund your account. You can just go to a Cubs game and say, hey, you know what? I really want to place a couple dollars on Chris Bryant to hit a home run tonight. And you have something specific to root for when he's at bat. So I think it can really add to your enjoyment of the game. And you don't need a lot of money. Betting $10 to win, let's call it 30 or 40 on something like that, can really add a whole new dimension to the game for somebody who's sitting in the stands.
Yeah, Evan, I totally agree with you. I think that a lot of people, especially the casual bettors, they worry it's the roadblock of trying to actually make that bet. There's a lot of verification you need to go through, a lot of things like hoops you have to jump through to get to the point of being able to bet. Having a brick and mortar location somewhere that you already are, somewhere that you want to add to your experience, just makes perfect sense. So, I think that we'll start seeing a lot more of these types of things, and I think Illinois is a great spot. I think I saw today that the GDP is similar to that of Pennsylvania, so they're expecting that Illinois and PA to have similar types of statistics and betting trends. So it'll be really interesting to see how Wrigley comes together, and that'll be shaping the future of in-person betting.
Yeah, I agree with you. And look, there's in Washington, D.C., there's a sports book that's opening it's now open at Capital One Arena. They have a temporary one open, and they're building out a larger one. So look, I think that in the UK, you see sports books. They're not necessarily big social sports books, but they're sports betting windows in a lot of the Premier League stadiums. So this is not something that's unheard of or totally unique. And when you look at stadiums, really as entertainment complexes, they vary from one another in how they do that. Some of them are contained within the building. Others, like in Philadelphia, for example, you have 3 stadiums with a big Xfinity Live complex that's all part of that area. So the looks are different, but the idea is the same. These stadiums are more and more becoming not just about the games that are going on within them, or now, with fans not even being allowed in them. It's about everything other than that as well, and how these stadiums, that especially football stadiums, they may only have you there 8 days a year. They can keep you there and sort of create additional revenue streams around the games.
That's really interesting, Evan. Something I'm going to plug a little personal history here. One of the things I think is really interesting that I'd love to get your take on is the increased usage of live betting. I'll use myself as an example. Had the Mavs plus 12.5 in a live bet last week, and I watched an entire, I wouldn't call it a blowout, but pretty close to a blowout game just out of interest of that betting. How do you see that playing out and that impacting the sports world moving forward, where, the Giants might be down 21 as they usually are in my Giants fandom, and I might still be interested because I got them 21.5. Where do you see that playing into the space?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's going to keep people engaged, and it's going to keep them more engaged and engaged for longer periods of time. And sports that are, baseball is an example of a sport that has been now for years, right, trying to cut down on the length of the games. And I think that one of the reasons why is that they're losing fan engagement along the way. And this is going to be has the potential at least to be a huge turning point in that. And so, yeah, look, if you've got a bet on, I'll go back to my earlier example, if you've got a bet on Chris Bryant to hit a home run, the Cubs can be up or down by 8 runs going into the 8th inning, right? But if Chris Bryant hasn't hit a home run yet and he's got one at bat left, like, you've got a lot riding on that. And so you're going to stay engaged, you're going to stay involved throughout the game, whether you're sitting there in the stands at Wrigley or you're you're watching on television, which is equally important. It's going to keep those television ratings up. That creates additional value on advertising and sponsorship. So I think that live betting in particular is going to be a real rising tide for the teams and all of their sponsors.
Actually, I have a small anecdote there. I've said this on other podcasts, but last year I was at the Pirates game by myself. It was against the Brewers. Every single star player was out of the game. Yelich was out of the game. Lorenzo Cain, Josh Bell. And I sat there and basically watched a minor league baseball game by myself for 9 innings because I had a bet that I ended up losing with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th. So I did the game by myself because I had $5 on it. But again, I was involved. I'm a Phillies fan, but I just wanted to stay there and see it happen live and say, hey, I won this bet. Didn't win it, but it's still, I remember that experience more than if I had just gone to the game. So that fan engagement play, it's really powerful.
I agree with you entirely, and look, in these sports betting companies in particular, I think the operators they understand that, and they understand the value that they are providing to sports teams, and I think that's why you see them going out and trying to either develop their own content or create additional ways of engaging with their brands. And so, one of the things that's come up a lot recently has been their engagements with former professional athletes, because they use them, whether it's just a marketing play or it's a content play or it's some combination of those. They are the betting brands themselves are able to create that hook. And so now you've got, I've got, sports fan X who is betting on games and they're using my platform to do it. That's just additional value that I'm bringing to a professional sports franchise when we strike some sort of a partnership with them. So I think it can really come full circle, and you're just going to see value continuing to be added along all of these different channels.
Now, can you explain a little bit about that? Just about the change from even 2 years ago when teams, leagues, players had to stay as far away from betting as possible. Like, what changed? Why did it change? And what are the opportunities we have to see in the near future?
Yeah, well, what changed is that this became prolific around the United States, and so it was now not just a small opportunity, but a huge opportunity. And so I think that maybe, let's say, caused some folks to reevaluate their opposition to it. But yeah, look, this is going to be, this is a big deal for teams in the way that we already discussed, but it could be a big deal for athletes as well. And so, look, just, yesterday, right, the news broke that DraftKings had signed Michael Jordan to not just be not just promote the brand, but he actually took equity in the brand. And so that's huge, right? There are other brands that have done this with other former athletes. So PointsBet has signed like Devin Hester and Allen Iverson, like folks that have real brand identity in the markets where they're trying to operate, Pennsylvania and Illinois. And others like FanDuel have a deal with Pat McAfee, who is really a content guy. He generates his own content and had his own brand in that media space prior to his deal with FanDuel. But Jordan sort of brings all of this together, right? Jordan is, he's Michael Jordan. And so that's an incredibly unique asset that DraftKings brings on. Obviously, there's resonance in Chicago and in Illinois, but Jordan has resonance globally. And so that'll be really interesting to see. I think what you'll continue to see is whether it's the brands that are developing these former athletes or other content providers, there's the example I always give is, imagine that you're live betting a game and you've got like Tony Romo sitting next to you, right? And, we all talk about how Tony Romo is like the ultimate prognosticator when he's there commentating on these games. Now imagine he's sitting next to you and he's giving you live betting advice. And so obviously that's a little bit hyperbolic, but the idea, I think, is a good one, where if there's a second stream, right, a second screen that you are either watching or listening to, where you're sort of getting betting advice content along the way, and you can opt into it if that's your thing. If it's not, you have no need to. You can just listen to the regular broadcast. All of these things, I think, are what you're going to see rolling out over the next few years. And there's a real role for former professional athletes in particular to play in launching these products.
It's amazing, Evan. I think it's super interesting. And, you look at what Barstool has done with Penn. You mentioned Pat McAfee and now Jordan. what do you think the purpose of this? Is it, there are rumors that DraftKings and FanDuel are paying anywhere from $200, $500 for a customer. Is this all a customer acquisition play? Is this the brand play? Is this increasing, the value for the user, where I can get Jordan's take on a Bulls bet rather than just using my own? What do you think the real end game is here for leveraging these media outlets or athletes moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, obviously, customer acquisition is the easiest answer, and it's probably the shortest term answer. I think that longer term, brand development is probably the best way of characterizing it, because these brands are in and of themselves they already do have value, and they're going to have an additional value. And so whether you are just attracting new users that even you can convert over to your online casino product, whether you are attracting new users that you can retain and use on your content platform. So, you brought up Barstool. Penn National, they didn't sign a deal with Barstool. They actually invested, right, very significantly in Barstool. And so Penn National has an interest of not just using the Barstool brand to generate users for its online gaming platform, but it also has an interest in developing the Barstool brand, because it now owns like a third of that brand, right? And so if they can use that synergistically to build the brand and increase value in the brand and get user stickiness with that Barstool brand, and that's to the benefit of Barstool and Penn National. I think they've got an option to take the rest of the equity in it, right? So that's a real strategic move for them, and it's a little bit unique. But I think when you're seeing some other things like that, NBC now has an interest in PointsBet. There are other ways that these are going to be not just partnerships and not just strategic advertising agreements. I mean, these are full-blown equity investments. And so I think when you look at it through that lens, as these guys are really in it together, that's a long-term goal, certainly for those examples, and potentially others that go down that path.
That's amazing. I appreciate that background, Evan. As we kind of wrap up here, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. As an expert on betting, more on the legislation legalization side, who's going to win the NBA championship, and who am I throwing my money on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think who's going to win? Yeah, I don't know. I got to be honest with you. Notwithstanding the struggles that they've had going on, I still like the Bucks. I think that they've got something going on there, and
money right now.
But also I've got a little bit of a soft spot for the Houston Rockets, because they are. I don't know if you saw this, but there was a bet that was placed. It was a 5-team parlay. I'm forgetting all the legs. It had LSU and a couple others that was sold through a company, PropSwap, which is a really fascinating startup that's based here out of Atlantic City. And so it was sold for $3,000, and the winner gets, I want to say, if the bet hits, it's worth about $400,000. And so it needs the Rockets to win the NBA title and the Dallas Stars to win the Stanley Cup. So I don't think either one of those is likely to happen, let alone both. But there's somebody out there that's going to get pretty wealthy if it does. So there's a piece of me that following PropSwap and all they're doing that kind of has a rooting interest in those outcomes.
Love that. Well, I'm headed to Michigan next week, so I'll make sure to lock there because it's not legal in my state. But excited to lock the bet and then hold it against you if they don't win.
Oh, well, there you go. It's I would say like loser has to shave his head, but I think we're both past that.
Yeah, I'm not getting involved in this one.
Yeah. Look at this guy with his haircut, and it's you're better than us, James.
Well, Evan, thank you so much for coming on. This has been super insightful, and definitely we'll have you on again in the future. So anyone who's watching, if you have additional questions for Evan, feel free to send them our way, and we can do this again. And obviously, sports betting is one of the hottest topics in the game right now, and personally love talking about it and love hearing about it. So the more questions and engagement we can get, the more we can bring to you guys. So thanks for tuning in, and Evan, thanks for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you,
awesome. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Got it, man. Anytime.